All right, 13.8, reciprocal trig functions. So remember, a reciprocal is just you take whatever fraction it is and you flip it. So like the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3, and the reciprocal of 4/5 is 5/4. So the reciprocal of cosine is going to be 1 over cosine. And we actually have a special name for that. That's called secant. So cosine and secant are going to be reciprocals of each other. Sine is the same as 1 over, or the reciprocal of sine, excuse me, is 1 over sine. And we call that cosecant, CSC of theta. And 1 over tangent is the reciprocal of tangent. And we call that cotangent, COT of theta. So whenever you see secant, you can rewrite secant as 1 over cosine of theta. These two are the same thing, right? Instead of cosecant, you can write cosecant as 1 over sine of theta, because those two are reciprocals of each other. And instead of writing cotangent, you can write that as 1 over tangent of theta. Okay, so I'm gonna do a couple examples here. Basically, this is all exactly the same as we have been doing in the past, right? So find your angle, draw your reference angle, label the sides of the triangle, and then figure out what the sine is, what the cosine is, and what the tangent is. And then you could kind of figure out what the secant, cosecant, and cotangents are. So let's do this first example here. So pi over 3. So pi over 3 is in the first quadrant. It goes up like this. So pi over 3. Remember, opposite pi over 3 is going to be root 3 over 2. Adjacent to pi over 3 is going to be 1/2. And the hypotenuse is always going to be 1. So the way I would do this is I would say, so that's all the same. I would say cosecant is the same as, let's find out, cosecant is the same as 1 over sine theta. So I need to find out what the sine of this graph is. So the sine of pi over 3 is going to be root 3 over 2 because it measures up and down. So the cosecant of pi over 3 is going to be 1 over, and then you would do root 3 over 2. Okay, and then, so that's our answer, but we got to clean that up a little bit. So 1 times, keep it, switch it, flip it, 2 over root 3 gives me 2 over root 3. And then you have to rationalize the denominator, root 3. So that's going to be 2 root 3 over 3. So now if you want to check it, the first thing you have to do is make sure your calculator is in, let's see here, make sure our calculator is in radians. So I go to mode, make sure our calculator is in radians, that's all good. So if I type in, you can't type in cosecant in your calculator. What you have to do is you have to type in 1 divided by the sine of pi over 3. A lot of people are going to be confused because they're going to think that sine -1, cosine -1, tangent -1, they're going to think those are secant, cosecant, all that good stuff. They're not. They're inverse operations, not reciprocal operations. So we have to go ahead and type it in like that. So if I wanted to type in like 1, if I wanted to type in secant, it would be 1 divided by cosine of whatever. Okay, so that's what the calculator gave me for cosecant. If I want to check and see that that's right, my answer is right. I do 2 root 3 divided by 3. Enter. And it will give me the same number. So I know I got it right. Okay, so if you ever want to check it with your calculator, you can do that too. You have to be careful. If I give you a degree, make sure you type it in to your calculator with the degree mode on. Okay, let's do a couple more. So the secant of pi over 4. So here we go, secant of pi over 4. This is going to be, drawing your pi over 4 here. Opposite of pi over 4 is going to be root 2 over 2. Adjacent, root 2 over 2. And hypotenuse, always going to be 1. So now you have to think about, what does secant mean? Well, secant means 1 over cosine of theta. So that's going to be 1 over cosine. This is kind of nice because you're going to get right either way, but cosine measures the x value, so it's going to be root 2 over 2. And then we got to clean this up a little bit. So 1, keep it, switch it, flip it, 2 over root 2. 1 times 2 is 2 over root 2. And then you have to rationalize the denominator. That gives me 2 root 2 over 2, which gives me root 2. So the secant of pi over 4 is just going to be root 2. Perfect. And then finally, let's do a couple more here. Cotangent. So what I have to do here is I just go ahead. This one's a little trickier because it's a negative and it's a pi over 6. So negative 5 pi over 6 is just coming up 1 pi over 6 short of the full 6 pi over 6. So I know that this is going to be pi over 6. Opposite pi over 6, this is going to be a negative, let's see here, pi over 6 is same as 60, so that'll be root 3 over 2. And adjacent to pi over 6, oh, wait, that's pi over 3. This will be negative 1/2. Because pi over 6 is 30 degrees, my bad. Negative 1/2. And negative root 3 over 2. So cotangent is the same as 1 over tangent. And we learned yesterday that tangent is just sine over cosine. So tangent is going to equal sine negative 1/2 over cosine negative root 3 over 2. So now if we keep it, switch it, flip it, tangent is going to be equal to negative 1/2 times negative 2 over root 3. These will cancel. These will, negative times a negative is a positive, so the tangent of pi over 6, or negative 5 pi over 6, is going to be 1 over root 3. So that's going to go in here. So if I wanted to figure out the cotangent, I'm going to do 1 divided by 1 over root 3. Or you could do is just flip these, because remember, reciprocal, you just flip the fraction. So that's going to give me, keep it, switch it, flip it, root 3. Same thing here, 1 divided by root 3. If I flip these two, I get root 3. Cool. Got 2 more here to do real quick. Cotangent of 3 pi over 2. So this one's a little tricky because of the fact that 3 pi over 2 lies on one of the axes. So it's going to be pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. So 3 pi over 2, this is going to be at 0, negative 1. So the tangent, cotangent is the same as 1 over tangent of theta. So the tangent is going to be sine over cosine, so it's going to be y over x. So sine over cosine. So the tangent of this is going to be negative 1 over 0. Now your calculator is not going to like this. I don't know if you guys can check this one with your calculator, because it can't do 1 over the tangent of this because this number blows up. This number is undefined. But if you want to find the cotangent, what you do, this is the tangent. If you want to find the cotangent, you just take it and you flip the fraction. So the cotangent of 3 pi over 2 is going to be 0 over negative 1, which is going to give me 0. Cool. All right, last one, cosecant. So go ahead, if you haven't paused the video yet, go ahead and pause and just try this one before you guys get into the Math Excel to see if you're doing okay. All right, so cosecant, that's going to be the same as 1 over sine of theta. So I'm looking for the sine. So pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6 is here. 7 pi over 6 is just a little bit more. Cool. Oh, did I do that one right? Let's find out. 5 pi over 6. Shoot, we're going to have to come back and fix that one in a second. Oh, wait, no. That's negative. That one's good. This is going to be exactly the same. So 7 pi over 6. So we know that we're left with pi over 6 here. 1 pi over 6 more than 6 pi over 6. So opposite pi over 6 is going to be 1/2. We know it's going to be negative. Adjacent to pi over 6 is going to be negative root 3 over 2 because we're going to the left, and then this is going to be 1. So if I'm trying to find the cosecant, that's the same as 1 over sine. So the sine of this thing is going to be negative 1/2. So it's going to be 1 over negative 1/2. And then we keep it, switch it, flip it. So 1 times negative 2 over 1 gives me negative 2. So the cosecant of 7 pi over 6 is going to equal 1 over sine, which is going to give me negative 2. Okay, so big picture stuff. If you understand these 1, 2, 3 things right here, there's the only 3 new things. And then understanding that, okay, it's just the same thing we've been doing where we lay out our triangles, we label the sides of the triangles accordingly, right? And then we just think about, what does secant mean? What does cosecant mean? And what does tangent mean? Secant, 1 over cosine. Cosecant, 1 over sine. Cotangent, 1 over tangent.